cents for a Canadian dollar. So if you were paid in US dollars, you could automatically bump your salary up by about 35% when you exchanged it from US to Canadian.
Wow.
So found a company down there that's a big retail outfit that sells gasoline and convenience store stuff. It's privately held, big money. So I was on the internet at the time and I applied for it to see what would happen. Yeah, okay, bring it down. We'll pay you starting with 75 or 78,000 US. And by the time you converted that, the last year I was there, I made 15 or 18,000 Canadian. And that was, and I sent most of it back here to my two girls and their mother at the time, because that's why I went down there.
Yeah.
But psychologically, I couldn't handle being away from my girls. I couldn't take it. Month after month, I just psychologically started to sink, and I said, I don't think I can do this very long. But the girls were young at the time, and the mother didn't want the girls coming down to the U.S. We brought them down. We went through Hartford and the ferry over to Long Island and brought them into Manhattan and all of that. We brought them to Hershey Park in Pennsylvania. You could walk down the street and smell chocolate. Incredible place. Huge. Anyway, so, it was pretty good, but I couldn't do without my girls, and they weren't coming down, so I applied for a job in Nova Scotia at a pulp mill there. And got that job, and so then I went back and forth from Nova Scotia to Miramichi every second week there. And it's about 4-hour drive, roughly 4.5, so I had a good time, spent a lot of time in Halifax. I had a sister in Halifax, and my career was in IT, but geez Christ, are we going to go through this again? And then the forestry imploded.
Mm-hmm.
Like from 2004 here, when they announced the closure of both pulp mills, the sawmills, a lot of people in Woodlands, 400 or 500, 600 people lost their jobs.
Yeah, that hurt bad here.
That I've never seen a place, and there was a study that said for 6 years, anywhere in Canada, Miramichi was the one place lost the most jobs per capita for that date range.
Wow.
It was pretty sad, and I saw how pulp and paper was going to go because of digital. So then I went to the provincial government in 2007, and never really looked back. Government is government; it's always there. It's its own entity, but I've been there.
Yeah.
So, I didn't want to. My kids were 2007. They'd be maybe 10 and 12 years old, around that age, and I knew high school and then college was coming up, so you can't raise a child on love. Love is the most important thing, but it doesn't get your child an education.
Yeah.
It doesn't get your child braces, right? So I went where I had to go to get into government, and that was Campbellton, and got to Miramichi and looked after applications there, and still, I live in Blackville, but the team that I'm on now is based supporting St. John right now. So the IT was a good path. Like technology, in my view, is never a bad thing to go to do. At times it's too hard. It's really hard to get applications to play nice in the same machine. Sometimes they hate each other.
So technically you were ahead of the game back in the day. What do you think about it?
Yes, but I would know a lot of people that were ahead of the game at the time as well.
Yeah.
So back in the late 80s, when I was in the paper mill, I thought, you know what, I'm going to volunteer and be in Big Brothers Big Sisters. So I did that and got matched with a young fella that would have been around 10 or 12, and his father had passed away. His father was a electronics genius, from what I understand, and he helped put up the winders in the paper machine area, paper mills that wind up the paper and make it the right width and that kind of thing. From what I understand, he was very, very intelligent, but he died of cancer. So this fellow was, and they had built a new house back in the old drive-in, and this little fellow was sad, angry, confused, and just didn't know where to turn, and I could sense that. No one told me that, but I could sense that. So we would do things like that no one else would do. We would take a canoe and get down the Savogo River. They were crazy, but we did it. You know, we would do things like I had an old car, and we'd take it back in the new highway they were building to Bathurst, and it was just dirt road then, and we'd go rally driving. You know, it was, you know, it was never dangerous, really, to some degree. I mean, but we were never the cookie cutter match, because I knew he needed something extra. He needed something really strong here that he could enjoy, that was outdoors, that was active, that would take his mind off the situation that he'd just gone through and still was in. So it was a wonderful match, and I saw him a year or two ago, and I was in touch for, you know, as we went along. Not a lot, but he went to University of Toronto with computer engineering, and then switched to computer engineering at the UNB. Right. So he travels the world. I'm not even sure he works very much, because every time I see him on Facebook, he's always on a motorcycle, or he's always on his BMW, or doesn't seem to work very much. So what can I say? Good for him.
There's a career path there.
So, but you gotta have the mindset. You gotta have the mind to be able to do it, and do it well enough that you like it.
Yes.
You like it well enough so that you can do it better than anybody else. That's the key, and that's the hard thing about a young person, is they haven't had such a broad range of doing things. They don't know what they're good at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Understand that you have to fail, or you have to try in order to succeed. Like, not everyone's given that opportunity, or even that understanding either, right? Some people are just scared to fail.
Yep. So I mean, that's 58. I had a cardiac issue there 2 weeks ago. I got thinking about that there last week. My dad had cardiac issues. He worked for the provincial government, and we recorded people. Here I am, 40 years later, with a cardiac issue, recording people and working for the provincial government.
But you have me as a partner, and he didn't have me. Look at you.
Well, the truth is, the interview idea was yours. That's a fact. And I started in late January, to do local historical facts, and we would post them every Friday morning. Well, yes, that's good, but you wanted to change it up a bit and go for the video thing. And I said, I didn't really know what you're talking about.
I was like, when you sit down and just have a say. And he's like, well, what do you mean, Ricky?
So I didn't know what you wanted, but I said yes at the time.
You did.
So, and then, she harassed me in January. And
I
said,
did.
Okay, yeah, she did. So I said, okay, let's go with it. And in November, I was lucky enough to interview Ruby Summers, who was a World War II vet and was stationed in St. John's. And that was incredible. It was incredible. And I realized, and at the time I didn't know it, but I let the interviewee tell the story. I don't know your story. I want to learn as much as anybody else that watches it after the fact. You're the expert on what your story is going to be, and I'm just going to be a conduit. I'm going to be just the wire that makes it happen. You're actually going to make it happen. I'll ask questions, and probably ask dumb questions, but I'll ask questions that generally most of the population would ask themselves if they were in that situation.
And that's what I actually love about this, because when you talk with people, it's organic. It just goes with the flow.
Well, you know how much is scripted now? Politicians are scripted. Most of government is scripted. Everything is so scripted, prepared, written out ahead of time. Questions, answers are all scripted. You know, there's no real truth or soul to anything much in communications, on TV especially. And I said, well, I'm not going to be a cookie cutter. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to script it ahead of time. I'm not going to give you questions and then you can prepare answers. I'm going to find out what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay?
See, I used my big word, organically.
I'm not there yet, so if you don't mind, I'll skip over that word. So we did Ruby Summers in November, and it was an awesome interview, and then okay, we thought, gotta go now. So then I interviewed Susan Butler, who knew my parents well, which I didn't realize, and knew some other of my family members well, and the stories she had were stuff you couldn't even imagine.
Yeah, true.
And a few weeks ago, I interviewed Wayne Curtis, who wrote 21 books, and he didn't know what I wanted initially either. So I coached him, to be honest, initially to say, look, I'm going to record you. This is what I'm going to do. You're going to get a copy. If you don't want to release it, we don't release it.
Yeah.
Okay? You're going to get it on a USB. You're going to plug it into your computer, and you're going to watch it. There's going to be parts I'm going to edit, at the beginning and at the end probably. But for the most part, it's largely unedited, and it's real, and it's raw, and it's human, and it's a person.
Phenomenal. That is.
And so the first part A of Wayne was put on Facebook today. Part B will be next week, and the stuff that he come up with.
Yeah.
You couldn't imagine this stuff.
Oh my. Yeah. Just how many times I was like, what? I didn't say too much because I was on the other side, but I'm like, but I get like, oh my God, I didn't know this. I'm not going to let it out of the bag.
So there's other people I'm going to interview, certainly, and I'm interested in people that were a pipe fitter, people that were a stay-at-home mom. I want to know what your life was like when you went through it, because those times are gone forever. Ever. They're never coming back. What is it that you can teach us, and especially the younger generation, as to how things were and how you got by, how you survived, how you handled all of that stuff without the internet, basically, because it only come really online around the 90s.
Yeah, and I like that
Early 90s.
People has the choice also. You have the choice if you do not, if once John gives you the USB and you don't like it or there's something off,
We keep the USB.
you keep it. And John's like, no, done.
That's
you just
fine.
don't. You tell us
your
it's good to go.
choice.
I love that.
100% choice of the interviewee as to what to do.
I love that.
I've taken history of a family, and once it came to surface, the person said, you know what, that's still a little raw. I don't want to, share that right now. And guess what? It was never shared.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So that is always going to be my choice, is to let the interviewee make the choice, always.
Okay, so now's the nitty gritty.
What?
If you have a choice of 3 people, living or dead, well, we're going to do the living ones at some point.
Easier. The living ones are easier to interview.
Yes, but if you were alive while they were alive, 3 people you would have loved to. Okay, let's go with the dead ones then. Oh, that doesn't sound great. Let's just go with
Mary Shears?
Yes, Mary Shears. 3 you would have been like, that would have been amazing to talk to.
William Davidson.
Ooh, okay.
Mr. Hutchinson, who was a lumber contractor. I'd like to talk to him. I'd like to talk to J. Leonard O'Brien, and because he made a movie in the 40s of the lumber camp and that way of life. I would have liked to talk to him. My father did interview him, and he's the interview, actually, no, for him it was a speech he gave at a Rotary in about 1950. My father has that speech in his book, Of course, that's all analog. Now we can do it digitally, right? So I would like to interview that person, Louise Manning. My goodness, would I love to talk to that girl, and I hope I do.
So that's what I was to say. Throw it into the universe and online.
Because,
3 people you would like to interview.
Yeah.
Lots of people,
Yeah.
but who do you like? Throw it out there. Just throw it out there.
I'd like to interview my dad because, you know, I didn't really know much about what he did growing up. He had an office there and a typewriter and maps and charts and Jesus, we had no idea what he was doing. No idea.
But there's people out there that does know what he was doing.
Well, now we know what he was doing. He was writing a
Yeah.
book, but at the time we didn't see any value in that because I was just a young whippersnapper and had other diversions. But he still did it, and he interviewed people in the community, whether it was for the Bober Credit Union, whether it was for softball with Timmy McCarthy. He knew enough to admit, I don't know. And he knew people that had the answers.
Nice.
So his ego was small enough to say, I don't know. So I'm gonna go talk to you and you're gonna tell me. And he had a tape recorder and he had a magnifying glass he used to look at maps. I still have that magnifying glass, and so I guess I'm doing the interviews, you know, like he did, but it's going digital.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can go video, and no matter what I say, it can be saved for all time.
Mm-hmm.
Not just for me, but for the community, not just for the community, perhaps for my own 2 girls,
Exactly.
right?
Be interesting to just talk to your girls one day. So what was
Yeah.
he really
Yeah,
like?
they would be favorable.
What was
I
he
mean,
really
no parent is perfect, and I had to be away a lot. So I wanted them to have a better income in the family than I grew up with, because you know I didn't want them to go through the pain that I felt when I was growing up. So I did what I had to do.
For me, I would love to hear what it was like for a teacher back
Yes.
in the day.
Oh yeah,
I would love to hear
I
that.
have one of mine.
Do
He was
ya?
a teacher
Oh,
at the high, well, at the time it was junior high, and now it's called Nelson Rural School. And I know who that is, and he's a very keen historian, and he knew my dad well, and he's on the list.
Okay. I'm trying to think. I like to hear like when you say, you know, the housewives, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the people like we call them the average Joe, but they're the average heroes. You call it because
Yep.
you know it takes a lot just to. When it's not just stay home. It's just like they have so much wealth of knowledge. Because as I'm learning with Beauvair's, you know, back in the day, the ladies used to go over and have teas on there on the
Yeah.
island and whatnot. But yet they knew a lot of information, and they held a lot of the families and a lot of stuff
Most
together.
of the food was homemade. Back in the 50s and the 60s, most mothers that stayed at home did not have the money to go. We used to call it store-bought bread. My mother was a great cook of a lot of stuff, but her famous thing was her bread. And I used to take bread in my sandwich when I was in school, little. And I'd always admired people that what we called store-bought bread.
Yeah.
So it's funny how your mind is when you're young.
Yeah.
What you don't have is what you envy.
And now it's a privilege, and you look forward to the homemade bread, eh? Just
Absolutely.
like
Absolutely. Those days are gone. So I want to know what it was like to be a pipe fitter up at Cadia, up at Fraser's.
Exactly.
How did you work at Birchall's? How did that work out?
Yeah.
How was it working out when you worked at Heath Steel Mines? All this stuff is gone. It's gone.
Exactly.
So I want to save what it is, what the knowledge is out there, and save it for the people that are here now and the people that are going to be here in 50 years or 100 years, because things have changed. Nelson became part of the city in '95, and just like that, boom, we were a city. Wow. And then, you know, of course, with the explosion of the forestry and and then people sold their homes, and the community lost a lot of its cohesiveness, to be honest. But now it's changed, but in a way, there's more money here than there was when I was growing up. You know, to have 3 TVs in a house was absurd.
Yeah.
Absurd.
Exactly.
But that's very common. To have 4 phones that
Yep.
are mobiles.
Yep.
What? They didn't even exist back there for the adenoid person.
Well, I'm going to say there's some good to that as well, because as I'm learning online, I did that DNA.
Yeah.
So learning some information, I actually had kinfolk live here in Nelson back in the day. So can you imagine? No, I'm just learning this stuff. We may be related.
Is that a threat?
Wouldn't that be cool? But this is what I mean. Like, it's just so much interesting stuff.
You
And
go back far enough, and we probably are, because I remember coming across a bro as I think the store over in the island. He had an entry in there for last name Bro, and I think I mentioned that a couple of years ago. If it was a relation to you, so most of us came. You know, I'm 75% genetically French. If you go back to all the heritage on both sides of my parents, even though last name of English, most of my heritage genetically is French, but we weren't. It wasn't French was never taught at home, so I never learned it growing up. But genetically, I'm there with the French community, and so that's an area that I want to explore as well. A relative has done a history of my mother's parents, and the stuff that is in that from 100 years ago is just incredible. Now I have a copy of it. It's in print, and I asked him if I could share it, and he said, well, I have to clear that with all the remaining relatives that are living in that document. But it goes in about where my grandfather was working on the railroad in the 40s and 50s, and shoveling coal and stuff like that. Just the hardship that people went in the past, the stuff that is probably illegal today.
so I notice we're going to maybe have noise in the near future. The city ma'am, she's really good with us with doing our driveway, so they're unloading
Okay,
the plow.
well, we'll shut her down.
But yes, but I do have one question left.
What?
Okay, so English is one side. What was your mama's maiden name?
Her maiden name was Ramsey, and
Ramsey.
and that's Scottish, and she was always big on the Scottish. She probably knew French when she was little, because her mother was pure Acadian, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And my father's mother was also Acadian, and she was from Rogersville. So on both sides of the tree there, from both branches, there's a lot of Acadian heritage, lineage there. So it's something that I want to explore, and I have a document that from my mother's side, and I've yet to get permission to share it. If I don't get permission, I will never share it. But this is a history that I want to find. I'm just a wee lad. I mean, my aunt that looked after me for 6 months, she called me wee lad, because I
love it.
was wee lad.
You were just a
Wee lad.
And you're like, how tall are you? Like 600 feet high?
They used to put me in a shoebox.
Yeah, so you went from like 2 little pounds, like this many
Yeah,
inches,
it's
to
just
like,
pure determination and,
wow, it's
and
amazing.
good nourishment. But anyway, I'm just a wee lad, and there's so many other families that have history that goes back a long time. And let's bring out what we can with the people that are alive now, because I'm not going to be around in 50 years, nor would I want to be, because I'll be so broken down, I'll just be worse than I am now. So let's capture what we have now with the people that know it with a video. Books are fine, but it's so much of a stronger connection with a video, with a person
100%.
telling it firsthand.
100%.
Why? Because it adds the human factor.
A little bit of humor too.
Well, I try to do that as much as I can, and every life is a mixture of good and bad, happy, sad,
Yep.
gain and loss. That's everybody goes through that. Everybody struggles, and and I don't want to know all your dirty laundry, but I want to know what your environment was growing up and how you coped, and
Yeah.
what the what the technology was like. A toaster at the time was technology. There's no such
That's
things
true,
as a computer.
That's true, right?
A telephone line was a big deal. I mean, I interviewed a girl in 2016 or 17 that grew up without power, grew up in the Northwest, and she was something. She was something. I still have it, but it's audio. But what I'm going to do is get pictures from her childhood as much as we can, if they existed, which I doubt because she was dirt poor. And, I asked her, well, what kind of house did you live in? Well, compared to standards today, I'd call it a tar paper shack. But it's just because back then you had two big wood stoves, you had oil lamps, and you get up in the morning at 6 a.m. and you looked after the animals.
Yeah.
Everybody had animals. Before you even fed yourself, you went out and looked after the animals.
The ones that were going to feed you in the long run.
Well, a lot of families had farms in the rural areas, and so I hope to use that as well. But I haven't got permission from the whole family. So until I get that, I don't think I'm going to bring that forward, because permission is a big deal to me. What you're telling me in the interview is personal, and you have the right to decide whether you keep it or you share it. That's your right, 100%.
If you want to contact or have this conversation, be an interviewee, have a say, sit down with this legend. What do they call it? The myth, the legend,
The man.
The myth. Oh my God, I should make a poster. Anyways, so if you want to be interviewed and share your story, squirrel, right? Contact us at 622-8526 by email at ed@bullbearsisland.ca. We're on Facebook, right into the Bull Bears Island Interpretive Center on Facebook. Many different ways to contact us, and we'll set it up. So remember, there's no obligation.
No.
Have a say.
No.
It's as easy going as this.
If I was to do the interview, I wouldn't be dressed like this. I'm dressed like this because I'm going to the woodlot, okay? So I got suits, but I didn't wear a suit because suit in the woodlot, that's not done anymore, okay?
He normally interviews with a suit. The first thing I asked him, I'm like, interviewing today, I'm like, should I be, what did I say? I said something, a suit? Is it a suit day or something?
No.
Meaning me.
No.
But he's like, no, I'm going in the woods, so
No.
I'll be dressed normal. I'm like, do I wear a suit? And I'm like, I wear Bull Bears.
Well, and the other thing is I give the interviewee the choice as to where they want the interview to be done.
Good point.
The first two that I did, the girl in 2017 and the girl in last November, they chose to interview in their home. Fine with me, let's do her.
Yep.
Let's get her done. And I became good friends with the girl in 2017, and towards the end, we gave her flowers when her last days were there, and we became very good friends. So if you want to do the interview in your house, fine. We've done one at the Pines in Blackville, in the restaurant. There's a bit of noise in the background, but it's real, it's genuine. I'm not going into no stupid studio and have the perfect lights and the perfect sound. I'm not doing it. And another one was done at a Mill Cove in Newcastle. So any place you're comfortable with and we can get a decent acoustics and a bit of privacy. And right now the tractor is going to come here and maybe go through the wall, so we're going to wrap this up. And I have to get some clearance from my... Jesus!
Stop!
Well...
But you know what? But we are going to be walking pretty all the way out.
Yeah. You don't get chewed up by the augers. So anywhere you want to do it, I'll do it. And at the end of the road, if you want to keep it personal, it's kept personal. You want to share it with other member shears, we'll do that. Whatever you like. You're the most important asset to this process. He's got the damn tractor with the auger against the door. Hello. So we're gonna wrap it up. If you have any questions,
Before we forget, sorry. Ultimately, we hope in due time that we're going to be able to have it with the audience to have an
Yeah.
in time.
Like a real time as the interview goes. And I spoke to the principal here at Nelson Rural, and you should know him from Ball here. believe it or not. He's a good ball player too. And we have access to the library, so we're thinking there that once we get rolling here,
Yeah.
we could have an interview and do it real time and have people connect through digital, like online, or call in and say, what about this? And they might have a question. And that would be good because it would be interaction with the audience, but it would give me a chance to ask better questions because you might have one that I didn't think of, right? So we're going to try it, and we're going to try whatever we can do to preserve the history of the Miramichi. You know, if you look at what Louise Manning did way back in the day, you know, way back when a recorder was given from Lord Beaverbrook, you know, to someone here in Newcastle, and he said, go out and record these folk songs that are sung in the community. And they went out and did it, and that, I think, was the start of preservation of the history of the Miramichi. These folk songs were sung largely in the lumber camps because you're not doing a whole lot there, and most of them were dry. They didn't allow alcohol, so they made up folk songs, and they didn't have a lot of instruments, so most of them were sung without instruments, and it became a legacy of the Miramichi. So that's where it started, and there's anything the Miramichi does better than any place I've ever been. It's people, and people sticking together, and people sharing their ideas and their comments, their history with other people. Because if you go out inside the river, in fact, what we had in the 60s, 70s, 40s, 80s, whatever, was unique because, you know, to drive from here to Moncton was a big deal. You didn't do it very often back then, and so we were kind of an isolated area, and we had a rich mixture of Irish, Scottish, French, the First Nations community, and we had a very good mixture of a wide variety of people. So let's get it all. Let's do it all. English, French, you want to do it? I mean, I can't do it in French, but I can find someone that can.
J'ai pas français, moi.
Oui.
Ouais.
Oh, ben.
Oh, bah.
So we can do it in English or French, and I'd really like to have both because both communities are very good in their history, of course, and let's find out what you know. Just tell us what you know. I'm not looking for, you know, Nobel Prize stuff here because I'm not Nobel Prize material myself. Just tell us your story. And you may think, oh, we'll do it, but it's not really important. In 50 years, it's going to be really important.
Fair enough.
Okay?
Yeah. So as we started, we're gonna end it that way. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Like over the top.
OMG! This is great. Call us, email us.
What's your
text
email
us.
address?
Oh, I said it. ED. I have to say it really slow to make sure I say it right. ed@bullbearsisland.ca. Email us with your interest. The information will get passed along to John. He will do his magic. Make sure you let us know of who you are, your contact information, and when you may be available, just
And
to
where.
have and where, just to start the connection, and then from John and you,
Right.
well, you know, you work your magic.
So we already have good examples, you know, of Ruby Summers that is out there online with Susan Butler and now with Wayne Curtis. So you have an idea of what my style is and the fact that I'm not looking for you to describe how you went to Mars. I'm looking for you to describe what you experienced. Because it's gone. It's never going to come back. So we have to preserve that. And it's a bit of a testament to your life. It's a bit of a testament to maybe your family that, gee, you know, my life was something. You don't think it is, but if you really talk to someone and ask the right questions, you can realize that is unique and that is something that is never going to be repeated forever.
Did you just say that? Okay.
Shut her down.
Shut her down. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.